Every traveler has a before and an after story. Before this trip, I was naive. I believed that a smile was a universal language of kindness. Now, I know better. It was 4 in the afternoon when I stepped out of the central station. The sun was hanging low over the rooftops of Prague, or maybe it was Budapest. At this point, the names blur together. All I remember is the light. It was golden, thick, and smelled like old parchment and expensive tobacco. I stood there, my heavy backpack digging into my shoulders, feeling that rush of adrenaline, that I finally made it feeling. Looking back at the footage now, I see a boy who thought he was exploring a city, not knowing the city was already exploring him. I stood in the square for 10 minutes, just 10 minutes. I was trying to figure out the tram system, tilting my head, looking at my phone, then at the map on the wall. I didn't realize that in those 10 minutes I was being profiled. The way I held my phone, the brand of my shoes, the slight look of panic when I couldn't find my hotel address. It was a signal, a flare shot into the sky for every predator in a 5-mile radius. You see, the best scammers don't look like criminals. They look like the solution to your problems. They have the warmest smiles and the cleanest cars. They wait for that exact second when your confidence wavers. And then, he appeared. He didn't walk up to me, he glided. A black sedan, so polished it reflected the cathedral like a mirror. The window rolled down with a soft, expensive hum. "You look lost, my friend," he said. His English was perfect, not too fluent to be suspicious, but just broken enough to feel authentic. I told him the name of my hotel. He laughed, a deep, comforting sound. "Oh, that is very far. The trams are on strike today. Very bad luck for you." I looked around. The trams did seem quiet. Was it true? I didn't check. That was my second mistake. I was so tired, my feet were throbbing, and the thought of a soft leather seat was too tempting. "How much?" I asked. He waved his hand dismissively. "For a student? For a traveler?" "Don't worry, we use the meter, or I give you the local price, very cheap, 10, maybe 15 euros. Get in, it is getting cold." The door closed with a heavy thud. Suddenly, the noise of the city vanished. It was just me, the smell of artificial pine, and the back of his head. We started moving. At first, it was fine. We passed the statues, the bridges, the tourists taking selfies. But then we took a right, then a left, then another left. The grand stone buildings were replaced by gray concrete. The crowds thinned out. I looked at the dashboard. The meter wasn't just off. It was covered by a small black cloth. My heart did a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. "Excuse me," I said, my voice sounding smaller than I intended. "Where are we going? This isn't the way to the old town." He didn't answer. He just looked at me through the rear-view mirror. His eyes, they weren't warm anymore. They were cold, empty, like looking into a deep, dark well. The world outside the taxi window had transformed. The vibrant, postcard-perfect streets of the Golden City were gone, replaced by a maze of ancient, forgotten alleys. The stone walls here were stained with untold stories, shrouded in a perpetual twilight. Each turn felt like a deeper plunge into a labyrinth from which there might be no return. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat demanding answers. I gripped my backpack, the cheap fabric a cold comfort against my sweating palms. I tried to calm myself. "Maybe it's a shortcut," I whispered, but even my own voice sounded like a desperate lie. The air grew heavy, smelling of damp earth and something else. Something metallic and old, like forgotten iron. It was the scent of fear, and it was undeniably mine. Then, with a jarring screech of tires, the car stopped. Not at my hotel, not even close. We were in an alley so narrow it felt like the buildings were pressing in on us, trying to squeeze the life out of the space. Ahead, dimly lit by a single flickering gas lamp, stood a heavy wooden door. No restaurant sign, no welcoming glow, just a dark, ominous presence. The driver finally turned to me, his smile no longer friendly but predatory. "Here we are, my friend, the best traditional food. My brother is waiting for you." He pointed at the door, his finger a cold, unyielding command. My stomach churned. This wasn't a choice anymore. This was an ambush. The heavy door creaked open, revealing not a bustling eatery, but a cavernous, almost empty room. The air inside was thick with the smell of stale cooking oil and something indefinable, something that prickled the back of my throat. Ancient stone walls, heavy, scarred wooden tables, and an eerie silence that swallowed any sound I dared to make. There were no other customers, only two hulking figures standing by the entrance, their arms crossed, their eyes following my every move. They weren't waiters, they were guards. The driver gestured towards a small table in the corner, his smile returning, but this time it was laced with something mocking. "Please, sit. My brother will serve you the finest meal." I felt like a lamb being led to slaughter, every muscle in my body screaming to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot. The door behind me had closed with a chilling finality. I sat down, my hands trembling slightly beneath the table. A man, even larger than the driver, approached. He didn't offer a menu. There was no menu. He simply placed a single, unmarked glass of red wine before me, and a basket of what looked like day-old bread. "Complimentary," he grunted, without a trace of a smile. Complimentary. I remember thinking that word. It felt like a sick joke. Everything in this place felt like a joke designed to break me. I looked at the wine. It smelled sweet, almost too sweet. Was it safe? Was it drugged? My mind raced, panic tightening its icy grip around my chest. I took a sip of water instead. Cold, tasteless, but safe, or so I hoped. This wasn't about the food anymore. This was about control, about breaking the tourist, piece by piece. He brought a plate of pasta, bland, undercooked, the kind you could find anywhere for a few euros. But in this moment, in this silent, suffocating room, it felt like the most expensive meal I would ever consume. Every bite was a struggle, not because of the taste, but because of the oppressive silence. The only sounds were the distant, muffled city noise filtering through the thick walls, and the occasional creak of the floorboards as the two guards shifted their weight. I could feel their eyes on me, judging, waiting for me to finish, waiting for the final act of their little play. This wasn't just a ripoff, it was a psychological torment, a slow, agonizing realization that I was utterly, completely at their mercy. And the bill? The true cost of this complimentary experience was still to come. I put the fork down. The pasta was half-eaten, cold, and tasted like ash in my mouth. The silence in the room had changed. It wasn't just quiet anymore, it was heavy. It was the kind of silence that precedes a lightning strike. I looked at the brother, the man who had served me. He was leaning against the bar, cleaning a glass with a dirty rag, watching me with a dead, glassy stare. I raised my hand, my fingers trembling so much I had to hide them under the table. "Check, please," I whispered. My voice felt like it belonged to someone else, someone much younger and much more afraid. He didn't move at first, he just kept cleaning that glass, scrubbing. Then, he looked at the two men by the door, a small, almost invisible nod. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't paying for a meal, I was paying for my exit. He walked over, no smile, no thank you for coming. He just dropped a small, crumpled piece of paper on the table. I looked down. At first, I thought my eyes were failing me. Maybe it was the dim light. Maybe I was hallucinating from the stress. 950 euros. I felt the blood drain from my face so fast I thought I would faint. 950 for a plate of bland pasta and a glass of warm wine. "There must be a mistake," I said, trying to sound firm, but my voice betrayed me. It came out as a desperate plea. The driver said 15. This says 950. The man leaned in, his shadow stretching across the table until it covered my heart. The driver is a driver, he growled, his breath smelling of garlic and old grease. Here, you pay for the service. You pay for the private room. You pay for the protection. 950. Now. Suddenly, the two men from the door were behind me. I could feel the heat radiating from their bodies. One of them placed a hand on the back of my chair, a heavy, crushing weight. I looked around. No windows. The door was locked. My phone had no signal in this stone basement. I was in a ghost world, and these men were the keepers of the gate. I don't have that much cash, I stammered. My mind was racing, calculating. That was my entire budget for the month. My rent, my food, my flight home. Everything. The man smiled then. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. He pointed to a small, dusty card machine on the bar. We take credit cards, my friend. We are very modern. I looked at the machine. It felt like a guillotine. If I swiped that card, I was losing my trip. If I didn't, what would I lose then? My health? My life? In that dark alley in a city I didn't know, my life was worth exactly 950 euros. The sound of the card machine printing the receipt was like a funeral march. Whir, whir, whir. My bank account was empty. My pride was gone. I felt violated, like they had reached into my soul and torn something out. They didn't say goodbye. They didn't even look at me. The large man simply opened the heavy wooden door and gestured to the darkness outside. Next time, he sneered, read the fine print. I stood in the alley. The cold air hit my face, but I didn't feel it. I was numb. The golden city had taken its pound of flesh. I started walking, not knowing where I was going, my footsteps echoing against the wet stones. I was 1,000 euros poorer, but I had learned the most expensive lesson of my life. I walked for hours. I didn't know where I was, and for the first time in my life, I didn't care. The grand cathedrals and the golden statues that looked so welcoming just a few hours ago, they now felt like silent witnesses to a crime. My pockets were empty, and my mind was a storm of what-ifs. What if I had just turned around? What if I hadn't been so polite? That's the thing about travel scams. They weaponize your kindness. They take your desire to be a good guest and use it to pick your pockets. I felt small. I felt like a failure. But as the first light of dawn began to gray the horizon, the shock started to fade, replaced by a cold, hard anger. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a witness. I found a police station. The air inside smelled of stale coffee and old paperwork. The officer didn't even look up when I told him the story. I showed him the receipt, 950 euros for a plate of pasta. He just sighed, a sound of pure exhaustion. This happens every night, he said, his voice flat. Technically, you signed the bill. You paid. There is no gun, no blood. It's your word against theirs. That was the second blow. The realization that the system isn't always there to catch you when you fall. These predators operate in the gray areas of the law. They know exactly how much they can take before it becomes a police matter. I walked out of that station with nothing but a stamp on a piece of paper and a burning desire to make sure nobody else ever felt the way I did that night. I lost my money, but I found my voice. And if you are watching this, I want you to listen closely. The Golden City is beautiful, yes, but it has shadows. To survive them, you need more than a map, you need a shield. First, never, ever enter a restaurant without a printed menu with prices. If they say special for you, they mean special price for them. Second, only use official taxi apps. If the meter is broken, the ride is over. Get out immediately. Third, trust your gut over your politeness. If a situation feels wrong, it is wrong. It's better to be a rude tourist for a second than a broke victim for a month. And most importantly, share your story. Scammers thrive in silence. They depend on your shame. When we speak up, we take away their power. I'm back home now. My bank account is slowly recovering, but the lesson stays. I still love traveling. I still believe the world is full of good people, but I travel with my eyes open now. Travel isn't just about the beautiful sunsets and the perfect lattes. It's about the struggle, the mistakes, and the resilience you find when things go wrong. Don't let the fear of the trap stop you from seeing the world. Just be the traveler who knows the game. Stay safe, stay curious, and never let the shadows hide the light. My name is Nasser Travels, and this was the most expensive meal of my life. I'll see you on the next adventure, hopefully a much cheaper one.